sound. Save the wretch like me. My name is Ida Soon-ok. I am a Korean War baby. My father was a black veteran of World War II and the Korean War. When I was 8 years old, through adoption, he brought me to the U.S. to live with him and his black family. We lived in the segregated South, and that's why some of you may notice my Southern black accent. This is about a special day among the mountains of San-gok Dong. I can't pronounce it right, I'm trying. I caught a train from Seoul to San-gok Dong, which was on the outskirts of Incheon. As I was looking out the window, I saw the same cypress trees lining the road like sentinels as the car took me away. This was my last day in the village of my childhood. Falling asleep, I had spent the year in Korea looking for my mother. It no longer mattered to me whether she was good or bad, prostitute or not. The psychic umbilical cord is never severed. All I know is that I just wanted to see her again, just one more time. So even now, I wish that someone in the audience might know her name, Pei Soon-ja. As the train started moving, it lulled me into a nap, and I fell asleep. So I passed my usual stop of Pupyeong, and I got off at the next station. I took a cab, and I asked them to take me to the Han-nil School. This school was located on a mountain pass that overlooked the old village. On the grounds of that school was a building, the original building to my former school, and it was called the Sung Lim Mixed Blood Children's Institute. I couldn't go to the public school. Schoolmaster Young had written a letter to my father. He said my mother, Soon-ja, too sad to be lonely by herself after sending her to you. When I read that letter in the adoption file, I cried and cried because it echoed a loneliness that was in my soul too. The cab left the station and it swung out onto the road. And I lost my breath because ahead of me was the Camel Hump Mountains. I have been looking for those mountains all year as I searched the village for my mother. In America, I forgot how to speak Korean, and I was losing my memories as when a teacher held up a picture of a camel. The double humps of the camel was shaped like the mountains at the end of the road running through the village. That was my last view as I looked out the rear window of a car taking me away from my mother, so it imprinted. So I called those mountains the Camel Hump Mountains, and I drew pictures repeatedly trying to remember my way home. Oh God, I forgot. Not the story. So on this last day, on this last day in the village of San-gok Dong, I missed my train stop, but I found the mountains. And I felt like my memories had been substantiated. It was real. And the hopes of my childhood had been fulfilled. Now, as the cab drove on towards the Mixed Blood Children's Institute, I started thinking. I thought of the TV show, I thought of the newspaper articles, I thought of the private detectives and all the phone calls and letters to all the women in the country with my mother's name. And it was all to no avail. I could not find my mother. I looked at that building that used to be the Mixed Blood Children's Institute, and it was deserted, abandoned, and crumbling. And it reminded me of the last vestiges of the hope that I had. More letters in my adoption file said my mother came to the adoption office in Seoul and begged them, please, let me see her just one more time. They refused. So she took cabs and she followed them throughout the city. And until she found out where they had placed me. When she saw my little shoes on the porch, she went and got the police. They sneaked me out the back door, so I never knew. I never knew she came for me. Later, they changed their minds and took me to a window. And when I looked downstairs, my mother stepped out of the car with my baby brother in her arms. And she started yelling and screaming. I tried to go to her. I really tried, but hands were holding me back. And so as I watched, they pushed her screaming and yelling into the car and drove away. That was the last time I saw my mother. So trying to contain the sorrow of this day, I decided to climb this mountain. I'm a big fat city girl, I don't know why. But I hiked and I sweated and I climbed and I reached the top. And I saw a rare 360-degree view. All had changed. There were apartment buildings, high-rise offices, and they encircled the old village. There was not a rice paddy in sight. And I had to accept the fact that my mother was not to be found. So standing there on that mountain peak with sweat and tears running down my face, I just raised my arms in supplication to our God of human sorrows. Sorrows that we have too immeasurable and fathomless for us to understand. And we all have our sorrows. I walked down and found a private spot on the mountain top, and I stopped to pray. Those memories had haunted me most of my life, and I turned to drugs and alcohol. And now, after a year of teaching and healing in Korea, I was clean and sober and had this year. God had given me a new set of memories. So I found love in the Korean people that helped me search for my mother throughout the year. I found my mother's love in the letters of the adoption file. And on that day, he had given me the gift of seeing the Hump Mountains one more time. Sometimes all we get is 8 years. Some people get more, some get less. And all I could do was thank God on the side of the mountain for the 8 years that I had with a mother that loved me. And I had to surrender this life to the shadows of the mountains of San-gok Dong. I dedicate this to Korean adoptees, and I just want them to know their mothers loved you. They just could not take care of you. Living in Korea that year, I saw the difficulties faced by unwed mothers. And sometimes the best of love is in letting go. Thank you.